Great. Well, welcome everybody to the session today on the future of advanced work packaging. We're fortunate to have Glen Warren and Yogesh Srivastava as our two presenters today. They are longtime co-chairs of the AWP committee, which I'm actually on as well. So I think you're in for a treat. Yogesh, could you switch to the next slide and give us the safety moment?
Thank you, Lloyd. Today's safety moment is in terms of the situation that the whole world is going through. There are solutions and people are now coming up with better ways of handling. Problems do come in front of us, but then people can do something about it. I'm very pleased to see the Calgary Construction Association has put forth a very interesting guide. I had a chance to see this a couple of days ago. Small 30-odd pages in there, but giving very clear-cut instructions on what needs to be done in terms of as you're starting the sites again. It has clear checklists, etc., and things related to a different line of work as well. Please have a look at this particular guideline and utilize it appropriate to your region and your situations. But all in all, I would say is the social distancing message, the better planning message, and the ability to follow some instructions which we were not previously or aware of. Those are all now clearly illustrated in this guide. I'd like you to take advantage of what was put together systematically by this Calgary Construction Association. So be safe, be healthy, and practice a new norm of a little bit of keeping a distance between people and activities.
Great, thanks for that, Yogesh. Could you move us to the next slide? So the Advanced Work Packaging Community of Practice, this is our fifth webinar in the series. We're planning on doing about 40 of them this year. And our vision remains safer, more productive, value-creating construction projects. And that's what we're committed to, and that's what we'll be working on over the next year. Next slide. And our mission, our way of accomplishing this, is by creating a community to share knowledge, encourage discussion, and promote adoption of advanced work packaging and other related construction productivity initiatives. And since we've rebooted the community of practice, we've had about a 25% increase in membership, and we are seeing that week after week. So the intention is to grow the community and have it be a vehicle for people to raise questions about advanced work packaging, make people aware of events or tools that would be helpful in advanced work packaging. So we've had some really good initial success, but we don't want to slow down on that. The advisory board will be getting together for their first meeting next week, and we have representatives from COAA, from CII, from ECI, and we're going to be getting industry representatives from the owner community, the builder community, and from the technology community. So stay tuned for further developments. Next slide. So I said that I'm on the AWP community with, committee with Glen and Yogesh, and I've had the fortune to be able to work with both of them over the years. Glen has been, I think, our longest standing co-chair. He's been in the role for quite some time now, and he's been providing great leadership. Glen is retired from lead core, but he was a vice president of construction for years, has lots of construction experience, and he was on the RT272 research team and was also a member of the 310 and the 319 research team. So he's been pretty passionate and pretty involved in this for a number of years now. Yogesh has joined us a little bit more recently, but he's actually been in the role for quite some time. Both he and Glen have decades worth of experience, and that's hard to believe with Yogesh because he doesn't look like he's old enough to have that much experience. He's worked on multi-billion-dollar projects. He's been involved in working on the technology side as well, and he was also on the RT272 committee. So he's one of the people that put together the advanced work packaging model. So lots of experience between the two of them, great leadership from both of them, and this will be your opportunity to carry on a discussion with both individuals. Next slide. Yogesh, did you want to go through the agenda?
Thank you, Lloyd, for the introduction. That was very kind of you. But over these almost 30 years now, certainly lots to see here what went on. But if I may say, Glen, he is like almost father of AWP, or what I would say. He's been around since 2003, championing this, continually guiding this effort. I joined this initiative somewhere in 2010, and I do believe that it's come long ways. What we'll share with you is the 2019-20 AWP committee activities, what is currently on. But largely, as Lloyd suggested for this session, let's keep this as an open conversation. So the whole session goes based on what the audience wants to discuss and put forth. So please feel free to put questions as we go along. But as such, we do have a framework around the 5 important areas that we are working on, and I'll share that with you along with Glen. Let's start with an introduction. Construction Owners Association of Alberta has been around since 1973 with the mandate of making construction Alberta safer and more efficient. Interestingly, the focus is from the owner's perspective. The region is Alberta, but sometimes necessity being mother of invention, we end up doing some good things which gets noticed. And one of those activities was the WorkFace Planning that was started in 2003 in Alberta. And at that time, there were some improvements in productivity. Somewhere around 2008, 2009, COAA from US approached COAA in terms of what can be done better here. Something good is going on in Alberta. And interestingly, what was an initiative for a couple of years now took its own form. So starting from WorkFace Planning to advanced work packaging, the practice was put together in 2013, I believe, and became a best practice in 2015. So as much as the mandate is Alberta, to be honest, we don't look at it as something region specific. We try to solve a problem in the industry together, and whatever benefits, it's an association which puts all our work products as outputs, the library, etc. is for free. So anybody can come to the COAA website and pick up on all the work that has been done and our contribution to the industry. And it is available for you to download the checklist, the descriptions, workflows, etc. are all available for what we do as COAA. Just a quick introduction on Technobelt, the company that I work on since last few years. We are basically pioneering the future of digital engineering and construction. We have taken an end-to-end approach. Digital AWP is the realm with which we operate in. Our focus is all around execution. So that's where we look at And the system that we put together to operationalize advanced work packaging is called PACE. Look at it from an end-to-end perspective, right from safety to the advanced work packaging, on-site services, and closing out on the work packages as well. As I shared with you, this original 3 volumes, when we were all part of this committee, we had no idea that there will be an audience, or there will be a community of practice with such interest and all this. This was totally out of the blue. We all were working just passionate about what is it that can be done better. Interestingly, 2 other guides were sponsored separately later on, the 319 validating it, and it was published as well. So by 2015, this did become a good joint venture, one of our star products, working with Construction Industry Institute of US, Stephen Mulver, Dr. Bill O'Brien, and several people in the US contributed to this. And it certainly became an important aspect of our work in COAA. AWP committee is one of the most active committees in the COAA region, in the COAA realm of things that they are doing. And we continue to build on that. So unlike CII, where they usually have a 1 year, 2 year type, a time-defined type of research projects, and they conclude with it, COAA has been something which is continually at it. So this year, the 5 important aspects of the projects that we are doing in COAA, AWP committee is, number one is on engineering readiness, spending some more effort in that direction. Second, on material readiness, the procurement work process. That's what we have provided as a clarification and a guideline. We are also looking at people's mindset and the readiness, the culture change, the thing that goes in our minds to be productive, to reduce waste, to add value every step of the process. That is another soft aspect of it that we are pursuing that as another area. And we are revisiting what we call WorkFace Planning with the on-site readiness in terms of back to the basics, because in all this work packaging business, sometimes it is, we forgot that this is all being done, not just because owner has a tick wanting to do this as part of contractual requirement. End of the day, it has to benefit in terms of field productivity and site execution. So back to basics is being pursued there. And last but not the least is an emphasis on the 5th aspect of path of construction. We see this as a very key activity in terms of a good program, a strong startup program for advanced work packaging. So that is another area where we are working on. I can pause here briefly today, right now, for any questions or anything you want to ask, but otherwise I can hand over to Glen. He can talk about engineering readiness. So just a moment here, Lloyd, if that's okay. Anything that anybody wants to put forth?
Yeah, we don't want you to be nervous about asking questions. In fact, this is a little new for us. Most times we go, Yogesh and I will put together a presentation that can go on for a half hour, hour and a half, and usually we leave a little time for Q&A, but we're both long-winded, and sometimes there's not enough time for Q&A. So we wanted to make sure in this format of a webinar, we left lots of room for people to ask us questions while it comes to mind.
So Glen, it's Lloyd here. Before you get into engineering readiness, Yogesh had mentioned that you've been chairing the committee for quite some time now. And so just so the attendees can get to know you a little better, a couple of quick questions. One, what made you decide that this was something you wanted to get involved in? And the second question is, what are you most proud of that the group has come up with over the last 17 years?
Good question. I think back in early 2000, I was working with COAA on another committee. It was called the Rework Committee, and that was one of the things that we were trying to reduce. And about the time that the WorkFace Planning Committee was starting up, we were just finishing that rework committee. And what I saw, there was a lot of similarities. In fact, I saw that Advanced Work Pack, or back then it was called WorkFace Planning, probably had some great opportunities to, besides be more productive, to really have a difference in the amount of rework. You take a look at the main thing with WorkFace Planning was, it was so obvious and it's so basic, I think a lot of people overlooked it, is that let's give the crew a chance to go to work with all of the constraints removed. How many times have we seen that in our world where the crew goes out, they don't have the information, they spend a lot of time looking for material, their equipment, the construction equipment hasn't been lined up, the scaffolding's not, you know, on and on it goes, and it just, all of those also contribute to rework opportunities. Anytime you have a construction plan that's helter-skelter, instead of being planned, there are obviously chances for rework. So I think that's why I first got involved in it. What am I most proud of, I think, is I don't think we ever imagined in our mind that this would become a global initiative. Quite frankly, I'm flabbergasted when I see companies like ExxonMobil, Dow, Esso, Suncor, all leading this by example. And it's an owner-driven process, and to see these types of owners embrace it and actually contractually enforce it onto all of their contractors, I think that's the thing that really amazed me the most, is how well it's gone and how global it's spread.
I see to ask the question, how do I get involved?
Oh, you're breaking up, Lloyd.
Oh, sorry. How does he get involved in on one of the committees?
Great. Glen, shall I share that?
Yeah, go ahead. Yep.
I think the easiest is to get in touch with either myself or Glen. We meet every month on second Monday from 12 to 2 as the committee. And it is quite simple that once you've introduced yourself, what you're passionate about, which of the activities interest you, you basically get tagged to a subcommittee within our group. But this monthly connect is what is the time commitment, at least as 2 hours on that particular aspect. And whatever gets assigned or whatever you take on as part of the subcommittee activity which you want to pursue becomes another set of activities. I can take an example that Lloyd himself led a subcommittee on the scalability side of AWP, because quite often when we originally put this out, people thought AWP means $1 billion project, then only it is valid, otherwise no need. So we looked at what are some of the principles that do that, and we had a subcommittee that concluded just recently with a couple of outputs, a report on scalability around AWP, etc. So those are some ways you can get involved. The next meeting is on May, I think 13th of May. If you reach out prior to that, we'll be more than happy to involve you with the work that COAA is doing.
Okay, I'm back. Apparently my video was straining my system, so we've turned it off.
Oh, okay. I wondered what happened to you.
So on that question, Lloyd, I can share something, what got me interested here. Those days in around 2010, I had just come off one important large project from construction site, called ExxonMobil's initial development, and got on with the Northwest Redwater project. The good thing was that the project was still in the feed stage, and we wanted to do all what could be done differently and not be one more of those EPC jobs. So there was a lot of enthusiasm. People who were leading this refinery job were ex-Shell people, a lot of experience in commissioning, startup, and operations as well. But quite a few, they hired early on some construction folks. Right in the feed stage, we had a good solid team of construction people. The idea was to do something different and prepare for construction early in the project. That time, all we knew was WorkFace Planning. So we had to, so what we could do early on the project to get this lined up before the detail engineering starts, these contracts are given out. I had the charge, the portfolio to help with what we call the NWR WorkFace Planning Program. And as I went in to put this all together, I had met Glen. I brought him to our offices as well, that these are some of these things which we are doing to get workplace planning done really good, and in a way that when we really hit construction, it will be all in line. He introduced me to what is going on at COAA and this AWP committee enhanced work packaging effort with CII. And that's where, when I looked at the charter and what CII and COAA was doing together, I felt, geez, this is exactly what I need. So what I found at that time, Lloyd, was whatever we wanted to do on the project, I found all the backup as part of the think tank that was putting the AWP practice together. So it was a solid support in applying all that on a real job and getting it going even before detail engineering starts. So that was in some ways advanced work, packaging, while I was practicing it. And what I felt proud about was as it matured till 2013, I had the opportunity to contribute almost a good section of 18 pages or more as owner's experience in AWP. And to author that was a great experience, get the critique from 18 to 20 people across that. And I was glad that whole section made it in volume 2. So I feel proud about that as well. There's a few other questions around scalable and affordable workplace planning software is essential to sell the process. And where do you see the industry going with this? Russell Lane is asking that. Yes, I think from a tech perspective, to have something which is simple, fast, and flexible that can address for smaller projects is an important aspect. I'm sure as part of our scalability committee, we also came up with some recommendations that if it is repetitive, if it is a TIC, which you have done, a familiar project or something of that sort, many things can be, by use of some technology and software, you can do a lot more. So certainly I feel, at least in our part, I'll speak for Technobelt, we are in the area of the lean approach to AWP, where you can get running with smaller projects in a short amount of time, which is highly scalable. So that is where industry, I do feel there are many more who are working in those lines to provide a solution that is more agile and more cost effective for smaller jobs, because you don't have the bandwidth of a 3-year window, or it's a multi-billion-dollar type job where you buy expensive servers, expensive hardware and systems, etc. So I do see that happening. We are pioneering in that area as well.
What we also see is that the principles of AWP, which were primarily developed, on large oil and gas projects, are just as applicable on small projects as they are on all other types of projects. We've seen some people work on buildings using AWP. They're using it in petrochemical. They're using it in pharmaceutical. So it's applied across multi-industries, multi-size jobs. So it's proved that it's very flexible.
Just going off the questions, Luigi and Selmi has a good one there. Two parts to the questions. How to be part of COAA advisory for AWP. And the other one on scalability can be made easy with normalizing processes and codes. So I really like both on the advisory part, it is easy, Luigi. It is quite simple to just get engaged with what we are doing. As I said, if you can come on board with the interest that you have, join us in the next meeting onwards, and we share the charter and every other details of where we are headed. The next year's charter will be put together somewhere in between summer. So we are open. You saw the 5 things that we are doing right now. Some of it will move into the next year, but there were some very good suggestions that had come through Lloyd. Chris Carr, I believe, somebody had asked on a particular aspect of, say, a new assessment tool for maturity in AWP. And your point here on normalizing processes and codes, I do agree that scalability can be achieved by standardizing a bit more than what is there in the guide. So these are some things that can be taken on as newer initiatives going forward. Open to that.
I think what's key is too, is I think one of the questions, how do you get involved in the advisory committee? And I don't think we can open up that advisory committee to have dozens and dozens of people. I think you have to keep it at a usable size, but if you're providing input, you know, be it through our AWP committee, both Yogesh and I are part of that, Lloyd's part of it. It's to get your message across and see if that's something that we want to work on.
So I just wanted to comment that we probably want to hold off on taking more questions until we get through the 5 sections. Glen, would you like to talk about the Engineering Readiness Initiative?
Yeah, one of the things we found after we came out of developing and publishing IR 272, Advanced Work Packaging, is that we had not given a lot of clarity or guidelines to how to manage engineering. And so one of the first things we did as an AWP committee here in COAA is we decided, okay, well, because an engineering work package is a new entity that is now becoming the deliverable of engineering, there were no clear guidelines as to how to progress it and how to forecast the completion of it. Because I always get on my soapbox and talk about a project I was on where I was waiting for an engineering package from engineering, and the engineer, the discipline engineer said, I'm 95% done. I'll be delivering it next week. Next week, I got the same message. Next week, I got the same message. And finally, I looked at it and we went into detail of they were progressing by the amount of work that they had done and how many deliverables they had, and how many ISOs he had done, and et cetera. But this guy didn't even have the vendor data to complete off his EWP. So obviously there was a disconnect between the work process and the progressing. So we've put together, and it's available on the COAA website there now, of a completely new way of looking at how do you assess the readiness and percentage complete of an engineering work package. So it's one of the steps we've taken to try to eliminate that guesswork. It's we've actually piloted it on a couple of projects. It doesn't take a lot of work to do it, and it seems to be giving the results that we thought it would. So right now, as far as extra work on that, we're looking at, we're waiting for some information to come back. We're looking for projects that have used it to get some information back so that we can get black and white details of what did it do to improve the ability of the contractor to have confidence of when that engineering work package was going to be delivered. So it's a key step, and I think we've hit that pretty good. Now we're just waiting for feedback to see how well that guideline and playbook is working.
Great. Let me take the next one.
And this, yeah, if there's some people on the line that would be interested in taking a look, I'm sure that Glenn would be more than happy to share that information.
Yeah, on the last slide we have here, the COA has a website. It's coaa.ab.ca, and you know, but it's an open website. You can go in there. They have a Google type search engine, and you could go in and just open up the website, go into the library, and type in EWP readiness assessment, and bang, out it'll come, and you can download it, take a look at it. It's not a big, long read, and I think it's quite informative, and quite actually easy to implement too.
Yeah. I think this is one of the good, say, outcomes following the AWP publications that have been out there for a few years. This guideline that was published and presented last best practices is one of a very good, say, developments as part of our COA committee that put together some newness in these aspects. So for sure, that is one area which you would want to get more confidence on the engineering deliverable as an EWP, because quite often I've also seen there is a challenge with engineering where now there is extra effort, extra hours, and extra deliverable that is now coming out of the engineering side of things. Certainly makes people wonder why I'm doing, what is the connect, and how it helps the overall project. Why am I going this extra mile upfront? I didn't used to do this before. I need more hours, etc. So,
but I think the key thing with it is we heard from industry saying that the contractors did not have any faith in the progressing and forecasting of completion of the EWP. And so we came up with a guideline that I think doesn't maybe solve it, but I think it's a solution. And it doesn't add a whole bunch of new steps or a whole bunch of new people to track. And it follows the engineering work process. So I think it solves a lot of problems without a lot of difficulty.
So Dan Slade had a question in there, which was how many CWPs are there in one EWP? Typically, if you look at the guideline, we are looking at the whole process of advanced work packages is to get early alignment between engineering and construction through the path of construction process. We typically promote a one-to-one correspondence unless you have some other reasons why you have to break it down. So it is discipline specific, and an alignment on a one-to-one basis is what we try to arrive at as part of path of construction. It may change if sometimes you may have a few.
One of the exceptions to that, quite obvious, would be a module could be a CWP. So that module could be a structural EWP, a piping EWP, an electrical EWP. You know, there could be multiples of EWPs that make up that CWP.
So taking this further to the next level, Glen briefly talked about vendor data, but the other work that we are doing that I am also leading in COA as a subcommittee is the procurement work process. And the supply, and it touches around supply chain management aspect of it. Quite often, we are looking at, from a supply chain perspective, what we can buy at the lowest cost, best quality, and timely delivery of the commodity. Now, that is all good, but what we are looking at enhancing two important aspects of it, which really impact the EWP or the revisions in the EWP or the delays on EWP, as Glen alluded, was vendor data. So we are looking at enhancing the discipline around vendor data that you are getting from the supply, in the supply chain aspect of it. And the second aspect of what we are emphasizing is the demand-driven material requirements planning. So as an industry, we are quite adept at what we say a forecast-based material requirements planning, where at some point of time, we have put together the requisitioning and the process of purchasing, bidding, evaluating, issuing the PO, and all that goes. But the project is still down the line, 14 months down the line. We are forecasting for things to be delivered, required at site date is what it is. However, demands change in these 14 months. So we are also looking at agility in the existing supply chain management systems, not only from the EPC side, but also from your suppliers as to how they can respond to the changing demands in terms of what's going on as when we are really working at site. So the confidence and the variability to handle that from a site perspective, allocation of that material from a much more digital perspective, and the traceability of the material all the way from when you produced your preliminary MTO all the way till it get installed by a subcontractor at site and got quality checked in terms of what was done. That end-to-end aspect from a demand-driven material requirements planning is what we are heading in what I call the PWP process. So earlier, it used to be termed as procurement work package. Package usually ends up being something as a point in time getting issued. But as you can appreciate, procurement the position changes every week, every month. So it is a dynamic thing that gets attached to the engineering work packages and the construction work packages. So we've clarified this to be a process rather than a fixed point in time package. So the two things that we are really after is the discipline around not only buying the commodity for the lowest cost, best quality on-time delivery, but also on vendor data. It is almost like I'm buying vendor data. So there is a required by engineering date by a certain time, and it requires a much more better clarity and the same discipline of delivery that you have provided it, so that the AWP that was released gets released without holds on a timely manner, and the chances of revising that gets reduced. So that is an important part in the procurement work process. Some work is being done, as you all know probably, that CII is also looking at it from a few other angles. Our focus is, as I said, the two aspects of it: demand-driven planning and vendor data. These are two important areas where we are spending a lot of effort. Now, the good news is one of the participating companies, credit goes to Suncor, they have been very kind to share a lot of data in terms of how they have so far handled the procurement process and how they have managed materials. So a lot of raw data has been given for understanding it, how it got allocated at the CWP levels, bag and tag, IWP, what all was tracked, where were some misses, etc. So that's given a lot of good basis. Please expect another guideline coming from a PWP perspective in this coming October, I believe, when we will resume the best practices conference. Matt from On Track is championing a good deal of this effort, and so are some other people who are part of his subcommittee. Shall I take this to the next one? This is an interesting aspect. Mindfulness and productivity. So this is coming from a study. Nargis and Glen have been working at it. I was championing this till the last year quite a bit for over 3 years, that, you know what, if we can just bring our attention and a change in our attitude to how we do approach work, especially having been in Japan and other places to see some principles of Mottainai, Kanban, Kaizen, etc. from the lean world. I truly felt that there is a connect here in terms of the people side of it, the human side of it. So Harvard Business Review had a study, and some of it is from there. these many thoughts are coming in each day. 98% of thoughts are the same as yesterday. 80% of those are negative. Can you believe that? And the things we repeatedly do become automatic, and it becomes our second nature. If you want to bring a culture change or do something new or apply a different tactic or do something, imagine the amount of resistance you will get. I would probably want to do the same thing as I did on yesterday or the previous project and have the same attitude. This thing doesn't work. What's the use? And all that comes into us. On top of that, in this modern world, on an average, 47% of the time we are distracted. And this is like, as human beings, within 10%, our attention span has reduced from what used to be 7 seconds to any topic to almost 3 seconds, so less than half. So if we don't pay attention to what we're doing, by just paying attention to what we are doing, I guess we can be more productive. So point here is that while we chase all these number, time on tools, and all the other aspects of it, if there isn't a desire to be productive, if there isn't a desire to bring a difference and deliver a great job, end of the day, right first time, all of these become some mathematics and packages and other things. It can still be on the shelves. We do nothing about it. So this aspect, the soft aspect, is being pursued. We have presented it 3 times, and this year again in the best practices, you will see something new coming up on mindfulness and productivity. Glen, you want to add, or should we go to the next one?
Oh, just a quick one there is that we actually have some feedback from some projects in the States, and there's a lot of things in mindfulness, and one of the things is mindset. And some projects had very good success in just trying to alter the mindset of people into what is different with AWP. Get that and continuously pound it into your mind. Pound it is a good, I guess I could say it, but just keep it in the front of your mind when you're on the project that we are doing AWP, it is different, and we expect it and we demand it. So you get that mindset, and it's amazing how it can change the results of a project.
Great. And you want to take this up?
Yeah. One of the things we find is we're trying to drive operational excellence into the IWPs, and that's the execution of the IWPs at site. We've been doing this now since 2006 here in Alberta, so it's almost 15 years of experience. And what we're finding is as it spreads around the globe, there's a lot of people saying they're doing it, but when you really dig down into it and do an evaluation of exactly what they're doing, in some cases it's not even close to what we would expect as WorkFace planning and what the owners are expecting the contractors to produce as WorkFace planning. So this is going to be one of the things we're going to revisit. We had some old rules which were developed back in the 2003-2006. We're revisiting those rules, the original text that we had in the COAA website. And, excuse me, and we were expecting to present a new draft to get feedback from industry. And this is a lot of ways how COAA does it. When we produce something, we introduce it, and quite often it's at an AWP conference or at our COAA Best Practices conference, and we introduce it as a draft, and we try to get feedback. And sometimes we may do this 1 or 2 times just to make sure that we're getting the feedback from industry that we're doing the right thing before we publish our final document. So it's just that, okay, so we introduced this back in 2006, 2013, we introduced AWP. It's continuing to evolve. It has affected the back end of that, which is the execution of the IWPs. We need to update what we have produced. So that's the exercise we're going through right now.
There's a comment that Luigi has shared in terms of Is this correct that, Luigi, you have a $800 million US dollar project where you have right now an estimate of around 7,000 IWPs for that project? So $800 million US dollar project? Considering that that is what he is stated, man-month? So MM was man-month something? I was confused with man-month or million. Okay, good. So in that case, Glen, any comment on how many IWPs he's ended up with? Just order of magnitude type of thing.
In ways, I'm glad to hear there are so many IWPs. It sounds like a big number, but when we first introduced IWP, one of the examples we had is that an IWP would be 500 to 1,000 man hours. And what we found from industry over the years is that that's an unreasonable amount of hours depending on the scope of work that you're working on and the size of the crew. For instance, you might have an IWP, which is the one electrician working on one junction box doing all of the connections. You know, he may be working there on that. That may be an IWP, and it may be 50 hours. So, and you may have other ones that are quite bigger than 1,000 man hours. So it depends on maybe the type of scope the project is. And I wouldn't be surprised by that number of IWPs. To me, that makes sense.
It also makes me worried that if we just go by the old rules, which emphasize on the hours and the number of planners, etc., I see that for 7,000 IWPs almost on the very high side of breakdown. And based on the experience that I've had, at least on some projects, many units I've seen, even on the NWR side, a $1.6 billion LC finer unit, or a hydrotreater or a hydrocracker, which is more on close to around 1.9 billion area, $1.9 billion. I did not end up with such type of numbers. I was operating in the range of 3,000 to 4,000 on somewhere double the size of this. But should really look into your breakdown philosophy. I do see some clarification. IWP should last less than 2 weeks project in low productivity areas. Fair enough. So there are some criteria you have applied. But I must say that quite often people end up breaking IWPs, which I may call a project control IWP. That is what we want to see, and in the offices as steps and things to be done. And it is really not the IWP that a trade group will take and begin and finish it with the scope of work. So it could be, so please exercise caution in terms of making a project controls IWP versus what a site foreman or a trade group would take it and run with it.
What also is one of the things we find we're really promoting is that as you complete each IWP, it has a walk down by the foreman and the crew. And what you're trying to do is eliminate deficiencies. You know, so if you have that many IWPs, that's and we're expecting to do a walk down of each IWP. That might be, you know,
tough one.
That might be a tough one. Yeah. So,
nevertheless, thanks for the comment there, Luigi. And let's move on to the fifth part of the.
Yeah. To me, path of construction is probably one of the key processes in AWP to make it successful. And basically, a path of construction is to break down the project into construction work areas and construction work packages geographically, so that you can match an EWP to a CWP. And what you also are looking at is the sequence and duration of each of those. So I've seen a lot of projects try to skip this or do a bad job of it. And when you go through a path of construction, you got to have all of the appropriate stakeholders there. I've seen people try to go through there and they don't include procurement. or you know, in fact, they're one of the ones that are probably most often left out of it is because they figure, well, engineering will look after it. But it's three guesses why when you talk to contractors, the three biggest problems on site are material, material, material. And a lot of times you can draw that right back to somebody did a terrible job at the beginning of the project of determining the CWPs, their geographical position, their alignment with the EWPs, and making sure that procurement could align to it. So it's an iterative process. You're not going to do a path of construction once and be correct, because as engineering becomes or information becomes more defined, you're going to be able to probably redefine your path of construction. But that you should be striving for when you go into detailed engineering, your path of construction is set. So that's just a couple of the things I've seen that projects are still doing a bad job on. And so the path of construction we have in COAA right now is probably, I think that was produced in 2006, 2007. So it needs updating to the latest of what we see is happening in the AWP world. So we are in the process of updating it.
So just a comment. I know that one of the things that you have as a future project is going through the website and updating information. And I believe you're looking for people to help do that, volunteers. Is that
Yes,
correct?
Yeah, we would love to have some help, and it's sometimes some of the most boring things to think about. And maybe that's why we've had so much trouble trying to get it and get this done. But it's not a glorious job going through and taking a look at the old stuff and updating it. But sometimes that's the best way to learn about an initiative, is to delve into it of, okay, what was initially proposed as a guideline and what is now working, and being part of that team that works on that transition is a very valuable lesson and can really increase your value to the project.
I must tell you, Glenn, my experience when I was new in 2011 or so, one of the activity was to create the library and then naming convention to give them proper codes and standardize the templates, etc. By virtue of taking that activity, I ended up covering the landscape of what all COAA has put together, and was, in a way, it was one of the very good ways to get initiated into this whole aspect of what COAA was doing. So just letting you know, it's a good way to get to know what it is.
And I'm very proud of it. We have a lot of documents. You know, as Yogesh said earlier on, the AWP committee has been one of the most active in COAA, and we're probably 80% of the library of COAA. And there's a whole bunch of other information in there on safety, on contracts, on personnel development, but we've got a lot of documents that we should really be looking at and updating. So sure would like some help there.
So we're now at about 5 minutes to the hour, and we have probably more questions than we can handle. But Steve, do you want to start sending some questions Glen and Yogesh's way so they can respond to at least a few of them, and then the others we'll put on the website with their responses.
Sure, yeah. So we've got a question here that was actually submitted. We had a webinar on March 19th, and Lloyd actually referred back to this at the start of this webinar, to reboot the Advanced Work Packaging Community of Practice. And one of the attendees from that webinar, Randy Posey, AWP champion at ExxonMobil, he posted on the AWP Community of Practice LinkedIn group, which we encourage everyone here to join and post questions there as well. he said that I'm sure that most practitioners have created some type of scorecard to assess their health. I would like to see an industry scorecard to harmonize efforts across the industry. And he's referring to health of AWP programs. Randy continues, my concern is that if we keep ourselves in a vacuum, we may think that we are doing a very good job. However, if we are all scoring ourselves across the same metrics, we may realize that there are items that we haven't even considered. All of this being said, is there an effort being considered to develop an industry-wide scorecard? I believe that with cross-organizational groups represented here, as well as COAA and CII, a great opportunity exists to harmonize this type of data. And that's true. At that March 19th webinar, we had representation on the panel from CII and COAA, even the European Construction Institute, as well as some senior members of industry, Shell and ExxonMobil come to mind. So yeah, I'll pass it over to Yogesh and Glen to try to address this question.
To that question, I think as we go into this session is almost coming to over another 2 months, and then we will be done. So in our next initiative, I got two important things as part of this interaction itself. One is this maturity, AWP maturity assessment scorecard. Maybe we can take that up as one of our activities in the coming session. So, and the other one, which Louis kind of led to, what can be done in terms of further normalization and standard coding, etc., to really simplify some of the flows and activities to make this more easy and scalable. That is another area that I feel that we can pick that up. So we don't have anything as of yet. As of now, that maturity assessment checklist that is there in the guideline in the RT272, that is what it is. We haven't really worked any further on, but we can take this on as an upcoming activity. And other people who are in this call interested, or you know somebody interested, can certainly also participate in taking it further.
Two things that are happening right now in parallel is CII is working on a data specification for a project, and what we at COAA are looking as what are the data attributes or the data points that we need to track for AWP. So I think that will be part of the PWP program when we publish it, and part of that will be this data point. So once you have industry using the same data points, then you can really start looking at the data and drive the KPIs. I think that would be a first place to start is, are you all tracking the same information?
Fair enough.
Yeah, we just got a comment from Mike Pappas, who is with CII, saying that CII has a maturity model and a way to measure a company's AWP status or progress. And those definitely are part of RT272. And actually on my response on the website, I indicated I was going to be reaching out to Mike to talk to him about this. So keep posted. I will have that conversation with Mike, and we will post the response on the website. Steve, it's now the top of the hour. I think we should probably, because we've got quite a few questions, we should probably go for another 5 minutes. But let me just let anybody who's on the website know that officially the website is over now because it's 12 o'clock. But if you want to hang around for another 5 minutes or so, we will be answering some more questions.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So there are a couple here that I think are really interesting, and I'll start with this one from Luis Manzano. With the pandemic situation, the normal is no longer as before, and I guess it will take quite some time to be. So in regards to advanced project execution and engineering readiness, I would like to suggest COAA start developing some kind of standard related to virtual communication protocols and or some kind of communications charter during the advanced project execution. Perhaps members can feed COAA committees with lessons learned and case studies.
Fantastic idea. I think if we can open some kind of a mailbox or something where we can have somebody collaborate better with us and also publish what we are doing on a month-to-month basis, what progress we made with our monthly meetings, etc. It might be a good way to get more collaboration going on in this realm. So look at it positively, and we'll come up with some communication charter or some way of publishing it, even in this COP, the community of practice as well, as to what is being done on a month-to-month basis.
I think he hit a key one, is that I think if we use the community of practice properly, there's a great opportunity, and I think just as you said, is there for lessons learned, for studies or results that different projects have come up with to get it, be a good place to gather them and let people know what's happening.
I'll take an action in terms of getting something which is more interactive for people to contribute as things to do, and perhaps an open SharePoint or something like that to drop something. If they want to share lessons learned, PowerPoint, a slide deck, or any procedure or any process they have improved on, that will be good. And in fact, if we can recognize that somebody's contributed something, that will be good too. So looking forward to this. Great suggestion, Louis.
Awesome. Thanks.
Questions around EWPs, huh?
Yeah. So Stephen Fortune. Now, interestingly, Stephen, thanks for your comments. This is, I guess, a testament to the global reach now of advanced work packaging. Stephen comments that he's joining the webinar today from the UK and has just been appointed as the AWP coordinator on a feed project in mainland Europe. He also comments his background is in construction execution, having just left a large-scale project in Kazakhstan where AWP and WorkFace Planning were successfully implemented. So that's very interesting. And Stephen does say he has questions about EWPs and how they should be defined. I'm wondering if that's a bit broad, Yogesh and Glen, but I'll leave it to you.
So there is an anonymous attendee also putting a comment there that EWPs are breakdown is in the first step of by a COAA, how to harmonize the process. So it's interesting because depending on the discipline, it depends on how your EWP is. So in many cases, and if your job is modularized or not modularized, that breakdown criteria certainly gets changed. So generally speaking, though, the easy ones which are more physical in nature, which you can visualize or model it, if I may say, is the ones where typically after a construction work area, which I believe is the last point of multidiscipline agreement that, okay, these are the COAs. But after the COA, I've seen having flexibility by every discipline to come up with their EWP boundary, if I may say, in alignment with construction. So in terms of civil, etc., it has its own take on it, whether it's area-based or execution philosophy-based, depending on your bathtubing the area or going by a specific location, etc. So that takes a different turn. Of course, steel, piping, and mechanical, even piping and steel take some of the commonality. But I do see mechanical taking a different approach in terms of the type of equipment, in terms of rotating equipment, packaged equipments, and others, taking a different definition. And E&I, a completely different ballgame. It's a different breakdown philosophy. So after the COA, there isn't really at least in my experience, I don't drive a necessity or a commonality to harmonize everybody to have same set of breakdown. In fact, the power is in the flexibility of a discipline-based breakdown for EWPs. If you are electrical for power, the main power, or for the secondary power, etc., things get done differently. So I see that all coming at a COA level, harmonizing at COA level. Outside that, they take their own shape and form. Glen, any comments?
Yeah, we have a format of what we think an EWP should be, and I think that is uniform between CII and COAA. But there's depending on the size of the job, you have to make sure that the size of the EWP or the physical size of it is appropriate to the project. And there are some things that are absolutely important to have in an EWP, and one of them scope, and I've seen scope just as easy as a 3D cut, a model cut. But you want to make sure you have a good list of all of the documents that are associated with that EWP, and you want to have a very defined list of material takeoff or bill of material, whatever you want to call it. Other than that, there's other things that you could put in there, but you have some of those basics. It can be a one-page document almost on a very, very small project and with small scope. So, or it can be a 20-page document on a big project. So make it fit your project.
Thank you. Juan and Shiv also had some comments. Shiv, you wanted to participate. Yes, we can get together on that. Juan has a question on schedules are too detailed for progressing purposes. It's difficult to tie construction activities. How is the best way of tracking engineering progress?
We believe a project is usually tracked at the level 3, which is at a EWP, CWP level. So even though you're going to be constructing down to a level 4 or 5 with your IWPs, those have to roll up to a level 3. So our suggestion is that a project is tracked by project controls and everybody at a level 3 basis. So that at a minimum, that's at a CWP and EWP level. So you have to be able to see the sequencing, timing, forecasts, progressing of each of those EWPs and CWPs.
So we're now about 8 minutes after the hour, and I think we need to put a close to this, but I want to thank the presenters and thank all the attendees for taking the time to call in. We will go through all of the questions that were asked and get responses from the co-chairs and post them on the Community of Practice. So I just wanted to thank everybody for taking the time to come, and especially thank our 2 presenters for doing a great job filling us in on where COAA is taking AWP. And Mike Pappas is on the line as a representative from CII, and we're going to be having them speak about their view of the future and advanced work packaging in about a month. So thanks for everybody coming, and great job, guys.
Just one final note for me. I'd sure like to get some feedback from the people who attended. Is this type of format where we have more Q&A more valuable? Just like to have some comments on that.
Please. Our emails are up here. Feel free to get hold of any of us, and we'll be happy to work with you. Thank you very much. Bye for now.
Thanks, everyone.